Hello everyone, it's Amy and welcome back for week 81 of the new Build Your Stash and Craft. Today we are going to get some fabric bits for our stash. And a very easy way to get lots of colors and to have lots of little bits of fabric to play with is to buy a rag rug. Now these rag rugs came from Menards. The one that I showed you that I bought for the series that I showed you last week, I've already torn apart, and I will show you all of the different fabrics that we got in that package, in that rug, after I kind of show you how we're going to take it apart. But I had somebody call and ask me if I would get them one because they couldn't find any. And now the hard part about that is the shipping cost winds up putting it budget-wise not as reasonable as if you can find your own rag rug and tear it apart. Because like I said, these were $2.50. And, that makes for a lot of fabric to play with. So, but I wanted to show you because I picked myself up one at the same time. I have an addiction to these. I have a whole hamper full. I think it was probably, I've already done like 6 or 7. But I just can't stop. It's something I enjoy actually just sitting and doing in the evening, is sitting and taking one of the rugs apart while I'm watching TV. And, but I wanted to show you because after I got home, I thought I checked before I left because I've been trying to not get the ones that have a lot of sewing in them where they have 2 strips of fabric sewn together. I prefer to have each strip of fabric be its own fabric. So, but the very first one that I got, which I don't have a problem with it. I like them, but I can't use them all the time in my projects. So, but let me see now if I can. I was looking at this just a few minutes ago, and I was noticing how you can kind of tell is this white thread here. This white thread is sewing this fabric together. And so I try and check on the ends. You're going to have your weave. That's going to be there. That's what weaves the rug together. But they kind of sew a few pieces together, so I kind of just try and peek. I don't want to ruin the rug when I'm at the store, but I just kind of try and peek and see if I see a bunch of threads going across the rug instead of up and down like the weave. Like here, you can see a thread here, and this one I can tell it's going across the fabric. So, now when I looked at this a few minutes ago, here we go. Again, this is the weave threads. These threads right here, all the way up this piece of pink, is sewing that together. And here you can see one that's very, very obvious. This here, with all of this stitching, that's not the weave. That's a very heavy, different thread. The weave is right here, and that piece of thread is right there. So that one's going all the way up there. So this one, after I got home and I was looking at it, I saw quite a few of those. So if you look at the end of this pink one, you can see that thread right there. And that's going to be sewing that piece of fabric together with another piece of fabric because it was too thin for them to weave it in. And so if you want that, you can look for that. But if that's not the way that you want it, kind of look for one that doesn't seem to have a whole lot of those white threads in it. And again, like I said, sometimes I try and look at the end, kind of peek in there to see if I can if I see a whole bunch of those white threads or not. And I've never got one that doesn't have any of those sewn together pieces in it. But again, like I said, if you look, you can kind of see if there is a bunch of that white thread going, I guess you might say horizontally, if I'm holding it this way, going across the rug, because the up and down ones are the weave, but if you see any threads going across, those are sewing the fabric together. So I'm going to set this one aside because it does not have all of those threads in it. It has some I can see, but not as many. And like I said, you're definitely going to get some anyways. But so I'm just going to use this one to show you. I'm going to start in the middle. Normally I don't. I start at one end, but I want to show you one of these that's sewn together so you know what I'm talking about. The biggest thing is is all you have to do is just cut the weave threads all the way across. And then once you get it, whether you start at the end, this is the first time I've started in the middle, but no matter where you start, once you get it cut once all the way across, then it's really easy to start pulling those out. And then you just have to trim it back every so often because these threads get a little bit too long and start getting a little tangled. But all you have to do is just, I'll show you, but you'll be able to just easily run across and cut them all out. So we're just going to, I'm going to get this one. And the hardest part is doing the very first row. Now, if you have a seam ripper, you could use a seam ripper for this. I did try a seam ripper, and I had a problem with it because seam rippers kind of have a point on them that kind of goes in and then, well, it kind of has a ball. I don't know. I kept catching it. So to me, the scissors were just easier. And so, but like I said, if you have a seam ripper, you can try that. Smaller pair of scissors, little nipper scissors work really well. So, and now you can see how we've got, because the weave goes over and under, we're cutting the over threads. The under threads are all still attached. You can see those there. So at that point, you just go in and you just cut those. Like I said, got to be careful with the fabric since I started in the middle because I don't want to cut the fabric. And once we make it all the way across, you can see how that just kind of fell apart there down in this area. So that's how easy it is. It really is easy. And there, I'm going to show you a lot of different things that I have done with these little bits of fabric already. The nice thing about this is you get a whole variety of color. Unless you're trying to do some kind of a big project, but even a crazy quilt or something, you could use this fabric for. And yes, it's a rug, but it's a rug that was made with scrap fabric. It hasn't been on the floor. Nobody's been walking on it. The dog hasn't been laying on it. It's just fabric that's sewn together. And it's a lot of variety, a lot of colors. The ones at Menards are. Sometimes some stores have them where they're all in the same tones, which I kind of don't care for that too much because for me, the reason I like the rag rugs is the variety of the different types of fabric and the different colors of the fabric. And sometimes they're easy to find. I tried to find one a few years ago, and I couldn't find one. And then just recently at Menards, I saw that they've had them, and they've had them now for over a month. So I think that it just goes in spurts just like everything else. But there we go. So now we've cut that across. Let's cut that bottom weave thread. And there we go. So now we have two pieces of the rug, but see how easily they just fall right out. And like I said, these threads will start getting long to where this starts getting caught a little bit. And if that happens, then you just go in and just cut them a little bit shorter. You can save those and use those for nests. As you cut them off, you're going to have, just a bunch of this thread. I don't save them, but you could. But look at the variety of types of fabrics that you have here. And now this one is really quite short. Most of them are quite long. And then I think that it just depends on, like each rug is a little bit different. But we've got this. This is a really pretty organza type with the green leaves on it. And that's quite long. So, and then we have, and that's the other nice thing, there's a lot of patterns and a lot of solids. I can open this one up. I can't open it up. There we go. So this one is probably only about 2 inches wide, and they're not all straight. Some of them will be ripped at an angle. Here's another short one. And the rug that I did yesterday, the one that I bought for this today, that one had a lot of the same fabrics in different places throughout the rug. there was one fabric that kept showing up, which was fine because it was really pretty. But look at all of these bright colors. And there's so many things that you can do with it. But I started in the middle because, see, this one is sewn together, I think. So now this one is sewn together, but they sewed it together with the same color thread. Normally, they're sewn together with white thread, which is very obvious. And like I said, it works good for certain things, but for other things, not so much. Now, this is a really thin piece that is sewn together. They've sewn together a gray piece and a pink piece. And I do like this side, when you open them up, I like this stitch side of that fabric for different mixed media. I don't care for the back side. But I do like that. So like I said, I don't really find it to be a bad thing. I just don't want a whole bunch of pieces that are all sewn together, especially since normally they are a little bit smaller. Not always. Sometimes they're really 2 or 3 inch wide pieces. But so that is what I was talking about. You want to look for those threads if you don't want too many in your... Oh, I thought that was sewn together, but that just wound up being stuck in there with the rest. This is the type of string that they're using to sew them together. And I thought this green one was sewn together, and it's not. Somehow they just got that thread caught in there. So, and then the other thing is that if you have a hair straightener, a hair straightener works really good to iron these. So, and if you don't have one and you want one, you can get them usually the secondhand stores have them, and don't pay a bunch for them because you're going to use it to iron with. It doesn't need to be anything fancy or name brand or anything. And just pick one up at the thrift store for a couple of dollars, and you just put it on there and run it across, and then you have flat fabric. Now, I do like, I like the wrinkles that the way that they sew this together puts into this fabric. But sometimes, especially some of the more patterned ones, I like to iron them. But look at that. Those are really pretty flowers. So anyways, and look at this. Here's another piece of organza, and this is like 4 or 5 inches wide. Not real long, but the whole thing is pretty straight. Sometimes it starts 4 or 5 inches and goes all the way down to a point, depending on how they ripped it. This one has a really nice small pattern. Small patterns work really great for different things. If you're doing like yo-yo flowers or something, small patterns work really well because you can see them. Is this folded? No. And that is probably 4 inches wide. So they're not tiny, tiny pieces. And look at all of the different colors that are here. This one has little tulips on it. And now this is one of those that it's just really skinny. Then it gets wider. And then it goes all the way down to a skinny point. So, you know, so like I said, they're not all just rectangles. Oh, I really like that turquoise with the black. That's really a pretty piece of fabric. And that's a good 5 inches wide. So that's how you take them apart, and you just continue. Like those all just fell apart by cutting it in the middle. I usually do it at the end, and you know, then you take them off one piece at a time. Now see, this is where I said they kind of might start getting stuck because that's getting a little bit tangled. So I just go in and cut it between whatever piece is stuck and the next piece over. That again starts the threads short at the next area, and then these you can just kind of pull off. And if it gets to the point where it gets stuck, you can just cut it with your scissors. And so that's how you're going to do that. You're just going to continue taking those apart and getting rid of the scrap bits of thread. So I'm going to set this aside, and I'll finish that tonight while I'm watching TV. And I'm going to show you just how much I got off of one. This is just one rug. This is my Menards bag. This is how full it is. And these are the fabrics that came off of that one rug. Lots of variety in color. This one has a whole lot of organza. See, this one does have a sewn piece in it. And here's another sewn piece. So like I said, you do wind up getting those in every one, but some more than others. And so this is the pile. I've got some gold. There's some gold in there. Just really beautiful pieces. These are made in India. So very possibly this is leftover sari fabric. I have no idea. You know, people buy their sari silk. And I have no idea what this is, but it is beautiful. That's the one thing that I can tell you is they have some real gorgeous fabrics in here. And I really haven't found any, like this color is not the best. Look how wide that is though. It's quite wide, but only short at that wide. And it's got the sparkle in there. The color is very blah to me. It's kind of a gray brown, and I like a warm brown. But for certain projects, that might be exactly what you need. So, you know, you have some of the stitched pieces. This one is another piece of organza with flowers on it. And we have this one with all of the geometric shapes. And that's in blue. Here it is in red, and this is the one that I said repeated in this rug quite often, was this red with the geometric shapes. It seems like there's quite a few of those in here. So, and that's a really pretty nice size piece there also. So now these are not, you know, they're just not for big projects. You're not going to use them to make a shirt or something. That's a really nice piece. Unless you piece it together, you know, you can do whatever you want with these types of things. Now this one looks like I can't tell really if this black in here is an accidental smudge or not. To me, it looks like it is. Maybe it got caught in something, but then again, we've got the red here, then the orange. That black could be on there on purpose, and then a larger piece may look more normal. To me, it looks very smudged. But that would work good at some type of a grungy journal, and see here, I can actually see a smudge. So, you know, so sometimes you get a little bit like that too, but not very often have I seen something like that. This one right here has red on it, and this red, it was right next to a red, and I'm almost wondering if this red came off of the piece of fabric that was next to it. I'm not really sure, but that could maybe be a possibility. But there are just lots of different types, sizes, widths, and lengths. And they just really are, it's very nice fabric. So now you say, okay, so I've got all that fabric. What am I going to do with it? Well, you're going to craft with it. And you can do anything that you want to do with it. When you see people stitching, seems to be a real big thing right now. So when you see people stitching, instead of having to go out and buy fabric, you've got some. So I'll show you a few things that I did with those strips. So here is a journal cover that I just started working on yesterday after I ripped that apart. And it just has a little bit of slow stitching, a piece of the white thread that they use to sew their bits together. And there are 3 different fabrics. I did a little rose there. And again, some slow stitching. I did a blanket stitch along the edge, and then a weave wrap down this side. And I will fill this all up before I decide what journal to put it on. But so you can use them to make journal covers. You can use them to make fabric flips inside of your journal. If you wrap it around a pony bead, you just put a piece of it into a needle and just keep putting the needle through and wrapping it. And this is only 3 or 4 wraps because your hole gets full fast. So you got to, you know, spread it out a little bit, but put 1 at each end. And then you can use that as a bookmark. The bead at the top keeps it stuck right where it's at, and the bead at the bottom makes it so that it doesn't fall out top to bottom. So, you know, that's just a very easy fabric bookmark. And if you know someone that likes to sew, fabric bits, you know, fabric crafts as gifts for them, they usually really like that. So, You can make little Christmas balls. This is a little styrofoam ball. You can make these. Now the slow stitching, you know how to do that. I'm going to show you really quickly how to do this. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but I'll show you how to do this. So basically, you're just going to take some, and these are small bits that were left over from doing this one. And so you're just going to take a small bit of fabric. And when you're doing the really, I don't know how to say that, the styrofoam with the larger gaps, not a dense styrofoam, the easiest way to do it is to just push it in. So you're just going to take it and you're just going to put it on there. I use my knife. Now when I do a dense foam, I actually cut lines in the dense foam and then push it into that cut. But use not the knife side of your knife, but use the back side of your knife. Or anything that's nice and thin and flat. And all you need to do is just take the edges. And you want to do it fairly close to the edge, but you want to have enough just kind of push down in there that it's not going to pop right out. We did these when I was very young, and we did not glue them. And my mom and dad still to this day had one hanging on their tree. So, you know, you can put some glue down in there if you want to. But we didn't. Being that it's a Christmas ornament, you know, it's not something that gets played with and thrown around, and so it's not going to just come out. But if you feel more comfortable gluing it in, you can put a little bit of glue down in there somehow. Maybe when you're all done by dipping the end of your knife into the glue a little bit and then just running it along those seams. So you just do like that, and then you get another piece. And they don't have to be square. And you just decide where you want it. And then just push it into the seam that's already there. My knife moved a little bit. I can't push down far enough. And then just start coming around the piece of fabric this way. If it's triangle shaped, you know, you don't have to have the rectangle. You just make sure that you push in all of the open edges. And you can get little styrofoam balls. These styrofoam balls I got at a secondhand store in their little craft department. I didn't know what I was going to do with them when I got them, and I've had them for a long time. But you never know. You have to be careful, though, as a crafter, not to become a hoarder. Or as I really like to call it, a collector. So, and you're just going to do that. You're just going to continue to do that all the way around till you have something that looks like this. And if you look, this was the last piece that I put in. And see how it's V-shaped there? So, and none of them are exactly, well, that's not true. The first few were pretty square, but this one kind of went up this way. So I just followed the lines of my seam and then came back down this way and just kept filling it in until it was all done. Now then what you can do is just take a needle that has a good size hole in it, which we have those in our stash, and put your twine through the needle. Push the needle all the way through. Put a knot in the end of your twine, piece of loop time. Push your needle all the way through and pull your loop right out this side. So then your knot's going to hide right into those seams, and your loop's going to come out the top so that you can hang it. So that's something you can do. Another something that you can do, well, I'll show you the same thing, but with a dense foam. Now this is a denser foam, and I'm not sure, I haven't even tried this yet, but yeah, see when you push it in, it just kind of dents. So in order to put your fabric in, you're going to want to, my knife is not locking. You're going to want to cut a line. Now, if you can't see that line, it's hard to, that's why my knife wasn't locking. If you can't see the line, it's hard to put your fabric in there. So you might want to just use a marker. You're going to want to use a washable marker or a pencil or a pen to draw a line on there. That doesn't work. Just so that you know where your line is at. Now, the one thing is you don't want to use permanent markers on Styrofoam because it actually could melt your Styrofoam. Any type of medium that has that is not water-based. If it's solvent-based, it will melt your Styrofoam. Don't ever spray your Styrofoam with... Well, do I have another knife here? Don't ever spray your Styrofoam with anything in a spray can, because that, you know, any kind of paint or anything, that will melt your Styrofoam. So now I can see a little bit where that line is, and that's the only reason to put it there, is just so you can kind of see where you're going. And then again, I'm just going to use the back of my knife to just push that down in there. And then I would wind up cutting it here, so that, again, I could push that down in there. So I'm just going to set that aside, though. But that's what I mean by dense Styrofoam, or also Styrofoam insulation works really well. That's what I normally use. But the dense Styrofoam that I just showed you, that came in some kind of packing. So, you know, you can keep that, and it doesn't cost you anything. Now, this is Styrofoam insulation. And so... they come in big sheets. They're like 4 feet by 8 feet. And, you know, I buy them that way because I use them for other things. But also, if you know a builder or somebody that's building a house, they probably have cutoffs that they throw away. Because if they get a small piece, and like, this is a nice art size piece, but to them, that's a small piece. They're not going to use it, so they throw them away. So if you know a builder, you can just ask them, because a lot of them use this now. You can just ask them if they ever have any little bits left over and if they could give them to you. Or if I go into like Menards or something like that and they have a broken one, they sell them cheaper by the halves, which is also easier to deal with instead of having to haul home a full sheet. So, but this is exactly the same. I drew out my pattern. And then, well, I didn't really draw it out, but I just decided that I wanted to do, if I can get it in here, like I wanted to do some green grassy areas. So I cut a line in my Styrofoam, and then I put this piece of green in, and then I just cut another line and put this green in, and another one. And then I did around a plate here, just, you know, cut my line. And then these ones I just, you know, just cut a straight line, and not perfectly straight either. I just use my knife to cut it. If you use a ruler, it's really, really straight, and sometimes it looks a little too straight. So, but this is, all of these fabrics came from a rug, and I did put underneath of them a little flat piece of quilt batting that I got at a secondhand store. I got a bag that had bits in it, and that's what I used. I put 2 pieces behind the round part and 1 piece behind everything else. This one doesn't look so great yet because it's not done, because I ran out and I have to find another piece. I have some more here somewhere, but I just wanted to be able to show that to you. So it's hard since we can't quite get it all in here, but it's just a really fun thing to do, because all you do is just cut your line, set your fabric on there, and then just use your knife or anything that's thin, even a credit card would work, and just push the fabric in. And it's just so easy to do. So, so you can make art pieces with them. You can weave wall hangings with them. And here is a pumpkin that I weaved. And I just hung it on a stick. And that, again, is with those pieces of fabric, and this also has some yarn in it, and some lace, and a little bit of our string. Nope, that was yarn across the bottom too. So, because you have to lock it in. But, and then I just finger knitted the, what do you call that, the stem up there. But yeah, this is just a weaved, like the rugs are weaved, I just weaved it back in, except in the shape of a pumpkin. And how I did that, we've done a weaving video already, but I took my fun foam, cut in the little slits for our warp or weave or whichever they call it. I drew a pumpkin, and then I just started weaving. I started like right here at the bottom, and I just weaved across and across until, and just kept getting wider as I was weaving, and then I started getting skinnier as I was weaving. And then I just came right to here and did the stem separately. But so, and those thin pieces of fabric work real, the strips work awesome for weaving. So, so those are, they're just a few things that you can do. The options are just endless. So, just if you get your rug because you'd like to have some fabric, these are some of the things that you can do with it. And I think that they're fun to play with. It's not super hard to store because you can store it right in the Menards bag you got it in. And there are so many things that you can do with it, including just tearing the rug apart is actually quite fun. So that is our project for today. Now, for next week, I found these at the Dollar Tree. So we're just going to play with them. It's not special, but it may be something you want to have in your stash. You may not want to, but this is what we're going to get for next week. We're just going to get some $3 watercolor pencils. Now, these are not color pencils. These are watercolor pencils. And that means that when they get wet, they basically turn into watercolor paint. Regular color pencils don't do that. So, but for $3, I like watercolor pencils. They're fun to play with. These are not super pigmented. I already did try them. I had an idea in my head that I wanted to try and do with them, which did not work. And it's not because of the pencils, it's because it just didn't work. But, and then we'll need some of our cardstock and a paintbrush and some water. So we're just going to play with these next week. So this is just something I thought would be nice to have in our stash. So $3 at the Dollar Tree, and that is next week's list. So thank you very much for stopping by. I really do appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.